This is going to be a video for the people who have been conditioned to be people pleasers, or for the people who are starting to feel a little bit more frustrated with humanity and life, and the people who have started considering putting up boundaries and maybe don't know what that means, or it's starting to feel you're feeling suffocated, you're feeling stifled. This is a video for you. So let's get started. This is going to be a bit of like my own story, but even before I get started, and it's probably going to be a little bit of like my awakening story as well, but before I even get started, if you have any interest in learning more about yourself on a deeper level, then I highly recommend that you start off with numerology and astrology. Regardless of your beliefs on it, regardless of whether you look at it and you're just like, oh, that's hocus pocus, or it's just coincidence, or it's just, whatever, I still recommend that you do that, because especially if you're in a place where you're like, I don't exactly know what I'm meant to do, those two factors, and when I say factors, there's so much more in those two, but as a broad level topic, those two factors can really help you get some more and deeper understanding, or at least give you like a guidepost. And this is coming from me, who I am, in terms of astrology, like basic astrology, I'm a Leo sun, a Leo moon, Cancer rising, Capricorn south node. You don't really see the Leo too much yet. You may see it coming out more and more as I do more videos, but because of the conditioning that I've gone through my like parenting and how I've been raised, you probably will see me more in like a Cancer kind of aspect. But obviously, more than your numerology and your astrology and your nurture versus nature, a lot of things go into how you kind of come forth as a person. So it's not just your astrology that influences like how you are perceived by the world, but it can give you kind of a roadmap if you have trouble articulating who you are or what your personality is like. Those are possibly good places to start. I know there's a cafe astrology that's really good for astrology stuff, and then in terms of numerology, I think it's like seventh path, or if I find them, I'll link them down below. I tend to go to the same two sites now, but when I started out, I kind of just like went multiple different sites and kind of saw where the similarities, the differences, and kind of did it that way. And just going by what resonates with you is a good thing to start off with. I say all that to say that those were some of the two major things that helped me into my awakening last year and kind of helped me shift a lot of my perspectives about my upbringing and about myself. So I am a life path 11, and if you're not familiar with numerology, there are such things as life path numbers that kind of, it's basically what it sounds like. It's like life path. It's kind of an overview of what you're meant to do in this life, or what your, at least at the very basic level, what your date of birth and your life path number means about the energy of like your purpose on this earth. So my number is 11, which is a master number. Master numbers are 11, 22, and 33. They don't break down. Again, definitely do more research. Stars Align with Carmen is a great channel to learn all those things from in terms of numerology, and everything right now that I'm learning on a deeper level about like the spiritual world and just consciousness in general, I'm learning from This Is Maria, Mariya, on YouTube. Again, I'll link all the channels down below, but I feel like as a person, and now I'm just gonna talk, so if you'd like to grab a cup of tea or a snack or something and just kind of vibe with me, you can. If you're not interested, But yeah, I'm just gonna talk now. So last year for me was kind of my awakening year. From this perspective, looking backwards, I think that I've had several types or versions of awakenings, or at least I've always kind of had this awareness of things that don't resonate with me that were being taught or conditioned to me, and then now that I'm in this perspective, it's like so much easier to understand why those things doesn't resonate with me or didn't sit well with me, etc., etc. I don't really want to zoom in, but I'm going. Oh, I don't think I can zoom in. Oh no. Oh well. Okay. So the very start of what I would mark as my awakening story started in January of last year, literally the first of the month. I went to church, the last time ever that I went to church, but also the first time in a while that I'd gone to church. And I was sitting in like the congregation, and I think it was during the preaching. I wasn't really listening too much to the preaching. Normally I am tuned into it, but that particular day I was hearing what was being said, but I wasn't like even focused on that. And in my head, I just heard this voice say, "This is the year to learn about yourself." Now, because I was still in that like Christian dynamic kind of, even though it hadn't resonated with me for a while from the moment I moved out on my own, it just wasn't something I felt connected with. And it took me like several months before I even went to the church that was like literally the closest to my house that seemed Pentecostal-ish. So yeah, the moment, like, I feel like that was one of the major things that would have told me that I didn't really resonate with Christianity. But part of me, I think, was just thinking that maybe I was just a bad Christian and I was just focused on work too much. But I just never had the desire to go to church after I moved out. And then I went a few times. And then in January, like I said, I had that kind of voice that said, "This is the year to learn about yourself." So still being in that kind of surface level place in a way, I was like, okay, maybe this means that I need to go on more solo dates and I need to learn about myself that way, because that was, I think, something that was like trendy and it was in my realm of awareness of like a thing that people did. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to go on solo dates. And from the get-go, I wasn't in the right vibration for that whatsoever, because at that point, of course, it's a new year, so it's that idea that like, oh, I have to change things about myself, do all these things. And back in December, I had gotten a wig, or two wigs, and I started wearing a wig, not really continually. It was like once or twice, like Christmas, I wore like a long wig, and people were like, "Oh, you look so cute," blah blah blah. But I never really resonated well with wigs. I just thought I was meant to because my mom would always wear them. But I personally never just, like, I'm not saying for everyone it's bad. For me personally, I just never resonated with it. And from like just maybe December into January, I was in this vibration of almost like thinking that I had to become like my mother in order to be happy or to feel like an adult. Like, I just felt like I needed to wear wigs and look more mature, dress more my age, all this stuff. And like, I did that first solo date and I hated it. I went to Barnes and Noble, but I was also dressed really like overdressed and not really in my comfort zone. Again, it would be something like my mom would approve of maybe, but like I didn't approve of it. I didn't feel comfortable. And it was probably like maybe 1 or 2 more months before things started really breaking down a lot more for me in terms of like understanding what that statement of learning more about myself meant. At that time, I wasn't able to pay my rent at my new apartment that I had gotten. I think that was the 6-month mark or 9-month mark, and because I had moved in March. So at that time, I was really facing a lot of financial troubles. Still am, mainly because of that, but that's another story. So I was in financial trouble. I was starting to sell all my stuff. I was moving into my vehicle. This is not the current version of that story. This is like a secondary version, but I had moved into my car for like 2 or 3 months back in the early last year. And around that time, I was still working. I was working back to the 2 jobs that my mom had forced me to get, basically. I had applied to one of them, but it had become something that, like, in my place of fear, I went back to those jobs, even though I hated them. And yeah, so I was working 2 jobs, going back to that grind of being mentally numb, emotionally numb, not really focusing. But this time around, I allowed myself to be a lot more curious again. I say again because I've always been a curious person. I've always been someone who's always seeking after knowledge. And even today, watching a video on Master Number 11's, which I've watched many videos, but this video, literally everything that was said, and it was from This Is Maria, everything that was said just made so much more sense, because it was like, I'm meant to be intuitive, I'm meant to be curious, I'm always going to be, very much of a visionary, I'm always going to be very introspective, I'm always going to have, like, this is just an innate thing for me based on my numerology, right? So coming out of that space of like, okay, this is demonic from that Pentecostal Christian view of like everything that is not in the Bible is therefore demonic and evil, and I can't question anything or else I'm demonic and I'm evil. And so I finally, like, literally I remember one day saying, you know what it, like, because all these things were coming up on my YouTube feed, and I was like, oh, tarot, isn't that technically evil? Isn't that technically demonic? And of course I'm getting all the videos from like TikTok and all the stuff about Christians saying how evil this is and we shouldn't be doing this and all this stuff. And there was just a part of me that was like, because I think I'd started watching videos, but I was like, if I allow myself to continually think and to say that everything is demonic, I'm never going to learn anything else. And that day I was literally like, what if I just let myself study and learn other things and see what feels right? And if it doesn't feel right, then I'll come back to the Bible and Christianity, and so, like, that's that. If not, then at least I'm expanding my knowledge and understanding more. So I started learning more about witchcraft, started learning more about Kemetic principles, Hermetic principles, and like the laws of the universe, and a lot of different things. I started off with African mythology and African mythology and like gods and goddesses, and obviously not all of them because it's a very in-depth, like, it's a very heavy part to go into. But I started off with like surface level things. I went into like Egyptian understanding and Egyptian knowledge. I started learning about chakras, all this stuff. I kind of did like a deep dive into many different things, and what I found was a lot of it made sense to me. Like, it made more sense to me. Before this time, I had read the Book of Enoch like a year or two before. It was more like I listened to it and it made sense to me as well. And there were all these like deeper spiritual things that just like, again, made sense to me. And when I had inquired about the Book of Enoch, with my parents, basically I was told that it was evil and like, certain books didn't get into the Bible for a reason. For me, coming from a perspective of having learned history, I was like, well, the Bible was heavily edited by several groups of people, mostly men, mostly white men. And also being in the like category of Black and having some level of African descent, like, I'm originally from the Caribbean, but like having that recognition and awareness that before Christianity was introduced by Europeans to African slaves, this was not in their realm of understanding. There were, like, for me, it was just like this idea that there were things before Christianity, and it just never sat well with me that like this was the only way or this was the only thing. It just like, it didn't make sense. Like, from a just a historical perspective, there were things before Christianity. Like, how do you attest for the people who came before Christ? How would you attest for the Israelites and, all the other groups of people on the earth? Like, it just didn't make sense to me that there was only one way for salvation or one way of knowledge. And at this time, when I finally just said to myself, I am allowed to explore other versions and explore other things and come to an understanding, a deeper understanding for myself. And I did, and I loved it, and I haven't gone back since. So for those of you who may be coming from a religious background or an atheist background, or just a background where you were always told that if you question things, you're in the wrong, I want to challenge you, especially if you're in a safe space to do so, like you're not in that environment still. Allow yourself to explore deeper and more and in depth. If you're curious about something, learn about it. And if it doesn't sit right with you, it doesn't sit right with you. Like, there were some like darker aspects of witchcraft that don't sit well with me. Like, I don't really vibrate well with like hoodoo. Not hoodoo, voodoo. Voodoo is a whole religion in and of itself. Hoodoo, I connect more with like the herbalist parts of it. In terms of witchcraft and hoodoo, I connect more with like the herbalism, crystals, like using the earth for like do no harm, like I use them when I'm guided to. I use it when I feel connected to it. I do make spell jars and stuff, so if you're interested, you can find it on sunflowerrenee.com. But yeah, so like I pick and choose what sits right with me, what doesn't. And I think that everyone should be allowed to do that, right? Like certain deities, I might connect to Bast and Sekhmet, which are two tattoos I want to get actually, and have been wanting to get for a while, from Egyptian mythology, right? But I don't really necessarily connect with Greek mythology as well. I understand it, I'm aware of it, but I don't feel connected to those deities as in wanting to connect with them at this time, at least now, right? And that might change. African mythology, I did resonate well with some of the higher Orisha, but it isn't something that I pursue too much right now because it's not something I'm super interested in at the moment. I'm aware of it, but I'm not super it's not what I include in my practice. Right now in my practice, I would say that I'm in this hermit mode of I do tarot. I don't depend too much on the cards anymore. I'm trying to just grow my intuition as I am right now. I'm focused more on my mind, my mental state, my vibration, my spirituality within, my connection to my higher self. It's more singular for me at this time, but there are definitely times when I might want to connect to the planets, or I might want to connect to certain deities, and I am okay with opening up myself to different versions and different guides and different energies when I am guided to do so, So I think that is a really important part. It's for one, not limiting yourself, and for two, allowing yourself to be open to the things that are coming through for you when they come through for you. So, for example, in those early stages, I was really led to Egyptian and African mythology and stuff because it kind of felt like I should be, because I'm Black, and it's maybe I should connect with those. But then learning about it, and I connected to certain principles and things, but recognized that that wasn't exactly the vibration that I held, and that's okay. I connect to Native American shamanism, animism, those things make sense to me, and I integrate that into my practice without necessarily labeling myself as one thing or another, or one part or another, and recognizing that spirituality as a whole isn't about one singular belief or one singular deity or one singular energy and path. And that possibly has been the most freeing part for me, because as someone who, I'm not a scholar necessarily, but as someone who's continually inviting in more and more information and learning more and more information and taking what resonates and leaving what doesn't, it's very important for me to have multiple sources of things that I can look to, I will also say that it was around this time, and possibly a little bit later, that I came into the realization that I was living for my mother. And I was living for my mother's approval subconsciously. Even at the time, I wasn't really in her, like, I wasn't living with them. I wasn't really talking to them as much. I was still in a space where I was talking to them every once in a while, or, there was still a connection there, slightly, because I felt like I had to, because I felt like I was indebted to, like, that level of respect, and if I didn't do that, I would be in the wrong. I've since changed that ideology, recognizing that even things like going to college, wanting to become a doctor, which is something that, yes, I had said when I was younger, but I think that was more because I recognize the vibration of wanting to heal people. But at the time, a doctor was the only, like, realistic thing that was in my realm of awareness. I wasn't aware of healers. I wasn't aware of herbalists. I wasn't aware that there was alternative paths to doing that. So it would always be something, especially in my teenage life, that would come up, like, oh, well, you said you wanted to become a doctor, so you should focus on that. And it kind of became this thing that I formed my identity around, only to later get into college. And then, I was working towards that path because I am a Leo. Well, not because I'm a Leo, but because I have that hardworking streak. I was like, go, 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 go. And then during COVID, I had to stop my schooling because the university I was going to required vaccinations. My parents were against vaccinations, and then it became this whole thing like, oh, you can either get a vaccine and move out, which I didn't have the money or the funds for because I was giving all my money to my mom. Watch my dealing with my shadows video, or stay and work, and then maybe eventually you'll be able to go back to school. So I stayed and I worked, and it was a very crushing time for me because, again, I'd built up my entire identity around becoming a doctor, and it suddenly felt like I was a huge failure and disappointment because now I'm not pursuing anything. Now I'm just working. Now I'm behind everyone else now. Like, it was a whole major, like, solar chakra, like, attack for me. I was so depressed. During that time, on top of everything of, like, working back to back. Like, it was depressing for me to not have a goal that I was pursuing, to not have a thing that I was doing. And yeah, I became very, very zombie-like in that time. So fast forwarding back to last year, I had this, like, epiphany during my first shift, my first job in the mornings. I was, like, doing inventory and stuff, so we would count and stuff, and a lot of my downloads would come at that time. And literally one day I just had this download that I wasn't living for myself. I was living for my mother. And even though I wasn't, like, in connection with her, even though I didn't talk to her, even though, like, this was still a very overarching theme of my life, of that I was living for her and for her approval subconsciously. And it was like, whew. And the minute now, back in November of 2022, I did do something rebellious, right? I pierced my ears more than just the bottom piercing. And that for me was like a revolutionary thing. And that was the first time I really said, you know what? F what my mom or anyone would think about this. I'm going to do it because this is something I want to do. I've always wanted to pierce my ears more than just the bottom two that I've had since a baby, and I'm gonna do it. And I did it, and I was like, I definitely got some weird looks from my mom when she did see me, and it didn't stop there. And I was like, you know what, there are a lot of things that I want to do for myself that, according to my mom or my stepfather, would be evil, but I genuinely want to do it from a heart space. It's not me being rebellious, it's me having seen it and having recognized the meaning of it and still being okay with it. And so I think I had pierced all my piercings at that point. Then I started thinking about getting nose piercing, so I did do a nose piercing. At the time, I was really heavy on getting locks. I didn't get them until later on in 2023, and then, of course, now you can see I've cut them off. But yeah, I started just like doing the things that I really wanted to do and was guided to do. And then I got my septum piercing, and I want a lot more piercings after this, but I got a lot of weird looks and a lot of choice words from my parents about it. And in our final conversation, a lot of things were brought up. I was doing tarot at the time on YouTube on another channel before this, and that was being called demonic. I was like, basically, I was the black sheep, even though I already was in my own way. Firstborn child, but black sheep of the family. And again, if you want to hear more about my upbringing and things like that, I have 2 videos on it so far that I've spoken about my lifestyle and upbringing and dealing with my shadows. And the other video is called Reconciling My Past, or Reconciling Your Past. Those 2 videos I go more into depth about some things. But yeah, so last year learning about myself was really learning what I believed and what I resonated with, and really breaking out of that shell of what my parents wanted me to believe, and realizing even now that that part of my experience was served its own purpose, but it wasn't ever about me living like them or being like them at all. Like, I was always different from the beginning, and for me it felt like I was being rejected, because it was like, why am I so different? Why am I so evil? Why am I so wrong? Like, what's wrong with me? And this is probably why we'll title the video something like, if you're different, it's good, or something like that. But like, I always felt different, and it was just like never something I was just like, why? Like, why am I so drawn to fantasy? And why does all this like magical stuff make more sense to me than reality, right? Why do I resonate so heavily with Alice in the Wonderland? Is it just because my middle name is Arliss? Which I don't came up with that name though. But I resonate more with like Alice. So, but I just Alice in Wonderland, just always like going down the rabbit hole and having this other world, entering the like coming out of the matrix and going into like, it just made so much more sense to me, and I can't explain it. And listening to the video, like I said this morning, about master number 11s and being intuitive healers, being different, it was just like, it confirmed a lot of things for me, because I was like, this makes sense. This makes a lot of sense. And my major, like, not aggressor necessarily, well, she was, but my major, like, what's it called? Not protagonist, antagonist was my mother, quite literally. And it was supposed to be that way, because I literally needed to come up under that antagonism and that like clashing of beliefs and clashing of ideas and clashing of personalities, just so I could come into the space of authenticity and recognition of who I truly am, and knowing how different it is from my parents, and recognizing that that is okay. And coming into my identity as who I am has been freeing. I brought all that up though, and I'm sorry I'm going on tangents, but I brought all that up because once I realized that I was living for my mother, and once I broke out of that place of what would my mother think about this, because I had that a lot very heavily in 2022, even after I moved out in 2022, I was still in this space of like, what would my mom think of this? What would my mom think of that? What would my mom think about this decision? And it was so taxing and heavy for me, because it would be like me asking that even for things that I know I loved and enjoyed. Suddenly I would hate that thing, and it was because I connected it to my mother. And literally coming out of that space of like, I don't care anymore what my mom thinks. I don't really care. And that was when my intuition really started to grow, because it was like, okay, there's no longer this pressure of what would she think and her ideology, and like this WWJD vibe, but like WWMD, like what would mom do, And breaking out of that completely opened up my intuition so much more. It was like I had to remove that her external voice, her external negative things that she would say that I thought was my negative self-talk. It wasn't. It was just repetitions of what she would say to me. Then I could start to hear my angels and my guides, and I could start to decipher between the good and the evil, her words being the evil part, and my words being like pulling me into deeper intuition, being pulled into deeper intellect. And yeah, so I started this video with like people pleasing and unable to set boundaries, because that's how I was. Like, I was such a people pleaser in terms of my mother. I was the polite, I had to be the good girl, and I still have that, because I mean, I feel like as a Leo on a more lighter of the spectrum, I'm just like kind in general, and I'm polite, and because of the negative words that have been projected at me, I'm very aware of how my words affect others. So I like, if I just meet someone, I really try my best not to meet anyone with negativity or negative words or like negative vibes. Basically, if I feel that from you, I'm just gonna distance myself. It's really not till you maybe get to know me a lot deeper, which is very rare because I keep a lot of my relationships surface level. Like, very few people in my life are allowed to know a whole lot about me, and actually there are very few people in my life. I actually just had a friendship that I actually hoped would last a lot longer for me in my life, who we shared everything together, and it was like, for me, it was kind of like, I know it serves a purpose, and I know that relationship served a purpose, but it was also like, well, there's another one, you know? Like, I've probably been super vulnerable and super deep and connected with like 2 or 3 people in my lifetime, and all those relationships have like come to an end, and I'm again in hermit mode, and I'm just like, all right, here we are again, back with myself. It actually feels pretty good to be back with myself, not gonna lie. But it's just this weird fluctuations of like people coming into my life and leaving my life, and I'm like, I'm in hermit mode again, and I'm in heavy like Hierophant energy, heavy download energy. It definitely serves a purpose. It's like there's such like crown chakra energy in this past few like week or two that it's necessary. I recognize that it's necessary and I accept it. But yeah, breaking out of always questioning what my mom would think broke me out of the people pleaser, but also extending it from just my parents and cutting them off and, you know, blocking them, and doing it across several relationships, even deleting Snapchat. Like, it became a thing where I just needed to enforce boundaries for myself in a lot of ways. And I also think that one of the reasons this most recent friendship ended, was because I was not putting up the boundaries that I needed to put up. And when I attempted to, I was again the problem. So yeah. I would just say I'm very introspective, and I'm very aware of how different things in my life, what purpose they're serving, and so I don't really grieve as much when things end. I'm definitely a lot more choosy. I've always been choosy about the people that are around me. Part of it was based on like isolation by my parents of me from like everyone, but also another part of it alongside with that was like me just like being aware of my energy, and how I don't want everyone to have access to my energy. So like literally right now, again, I can count the number of friends I have on my fingers. And even then, they're still more like acquaintances, and I'm okay with that. I do get into these like dark places sometimes where I'm like, am I gonna be alone forever? Like, am I meant to be alone? But more so now, I recognize that, especially in this particular season, I need to be alone to grow and learn and all this stuff. And then I can focus on attracting the tribe that I want into my energy field. Yeah, so if you're someone who's always been considered different or the black sheep or different, weird, etc., don't take that as a negative thing. That's more likely than not a positive thing, because it just means you're in a different vibration than a lot of people. I do challenge you to be introspective enough to be aware of your flaws, right? Be aware enough of your flaws and your benefits as well, right? Like, I am not going to say that I'm a perfect individual and like everyone else is beneath me. That's not like a fair, like, I'm just, some people are going to be for me, some people are not going to be for me. Some relationships are going to go really well for me and then they end and they're not so well after that, you know. I can be very diplomatic. You could say it's a Leo energy, you could say it's a master number 11 energy, but I can be very empathetic, and a lot of the times I absorb energies of people and things, and it's very hard to separate myself from those energies. So again, with that recent relationship, I recognized shortly afterwards that spirit quite literally needed me to sever that connection and that energetic, because we were feeling each other's energies and we were mirroring a lot in ways that were positive and negative, and well, mostly negative towards the end. And I think that spirit is really getting me back into a space where I can kind of peel off all of the energetic layers that are not mine, so I can come back to myself and be attuned with myself again and build up stronger boundaries, but also being like more aware spiritually of how I'm taking on energies and how I allow other energies to influence me. So I'm not upset at being by myself right now. I'm not upset at kind of being alone. I think that's definitely something that a lot of people need to get comfortable with, is being alone. A lot of people seem to be afraid of being alone, and I'm like, being alone is probably one of the best things that can ever happen to you, because if you use it in a healthy way of getting to know yourself better and deeper and connecting with your higher self and using it in a healthy, productive way, it can be one of the best things ever for you. You don't want to even connect with people after that, because it's like, I'm good by myself. But if you use it in a detrimental way where you're hearing all these negative voices and you're allowing those demons to influence you in a negative way, like, recognize that demons are teachers, right? And like, they can only tempt you with what you will allow yourself to be tempted by, right? And if you see yourself hearing certain things over and over again, you have to start to face yourself about, why are those the things that I continually bring up for myself? Why are those the things that continually tempt me or, you know, pull me into darkness? And you allow yourself to just face your shadows and deal with that. Like, it's a healthy thing, I think. Not a common idea, I think. I was even told at one point, like, oh, if you isolate yourself, it's like playing ground for the devil. And I'm like, if I isolate myself, I can finally silence out your voices and hear myself. So I don't think that's a demonic thing at all. I don't know why we have this like fear around being alone or being isolated or being in a wilderness. Like, we need to stop demonizing that and making that into a negative thing. It's a beautiful thing. I don't hate now. You know what? I have to come into terms with the fact that biblical knowledge is always going to be a part of my knowledge, even though it's not in my realm of belief necessarily. I do recognize that a lot of things in that book are true, and a lot of those experiences are truth in the very aspect of Jesus and his teachings and his ability to tap into higher power is in itself a teaching. So let me stop like demonizing that. I really do need to stop doing that. But like, even the fact that Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights before his ministry started, like, that should be an indicator for all of us that we all need our times of wilderness before some important shit needs to get done, right? So yeah, don't demonize like your time alone. Don't demonize being alone, being a hermit, as don't make it into something negative or bad. It's probably one of the most beautiful times of your life if you allow it to be. And for me, again, as I've said, I've noticed fluctuations. For me, I go into from a space of being by myself to being surrounded by someone or people, and then being by myself again. And those fluctuations always help me heal a lot more, especially if those relationships end badly, coming into a space of like being okay with it and being okay with what happened, and kind of reconciling a lot of things for myself. And I don't endure too much on the past, but I do let myself kind of see, okay, these were the positive parts, these were the negative parts, what parts were influenced by me and what parts weren't, where was it me not putting up boundaries, and where was it me simply being too trusting or not being too like, I put it as much upon myself as upon the other person. Like, I look at the experience, I look at like the good parts, the bad parts, and then I just kind of reconcile it. Like, okay, do I feel good about this? Do I not feel good about it? I don't feel good at the beginning, but then towards, give it a day or two, and I'm like, it is what it is. There are billions of people on this earth. Just because this one relationship or friendship doesn't work out doesn't mean that I'm never going to be in another relationship or friendship ever again, right? And even right after that relationship ended, I was literally not thrust, but like, I come into a whole new group of people, and this sense of like joining the community and being part of the community in a deeper way where I am currently. And I'm just like, I had lunch with them, and it was a little strange for me because I'm always surrounded by people that are older than me. Like, none of them asked my age, but I'm pretty sure I'm probably the youngest one in that group of people. And it was nice. Like, I laughed on either side of the table. I kind of migrate in between the different groups of the table, and it's just what I do. I flow. I'm kind of like a chameleon in my own way. Like, I'm quiet because I'm listening to different things and I'm kind of feeling the energies. And a lot of people get like freaked out by that. Like, oh, why are you like, my mom would always prod me and pick me. Like, why are you so quiet? Why don't you say anything? I'm like, I'm observing. I'm not saying anything because I have nothing to say, or I don't feel safe enough to say it. And if I'm just sitting there being quiet, I'm observing. If I'm not talking, I probably don't want to be a part of this group, And again, that's something that I also have to come out of being demonized for. Like, the parts of myself and things that I do that are normal. They don't have to be weird. It's weird for you because you're uncomfortable by my silence, because you don't know what's going up in here. You don't know what's going on in here. But for me, I'm feeling, I'm sensing, I'm experiencing, and again, I can only put those into these words now. Then I didn't know. I thought it was just me being an introvert, because I kind of am an introvert, but at the same time, recognizing that when I would be at work or when I'd be in like school projects, I could talk to people, and I could be the leader of the group because I could organize people. So I'm an introvert, yes, but like, when I'm with the right people, or I'm in an environment where I need to be a leader and I need to step up, I will. And just recognizing that I'm allowed to flow energetically as I'm supposed to. Recognizing that there are times when in a conversation, I will be quiet the entire time, and you're probably like, oh, is she listening to me? Is she like, I'm listening. if I don't, like, there are other times where I can make videos like this that are like almost an hour long, just me talking. And there are times when I'm so quiet that people wonder if I talk at all. And it's just like, I just flow as I choose to, as I'm supposed to. Even with my videos, I might go from one topic one day to another different topic the other day. I might do tarot one day, do just talking videos the next day. I might do channeled messages another day. Like, we need, as like a society and as people, we need to stop trying to label ourselves as one thing or another, as this or that, as like, just flow. I mentioned in another video, we need to be okay with our dualities and our polarities and being able to flow between them. We need to be okay with the fact that we have masculine and feminine energies in our bodies. That's what we are. We are energy. More like, this is a physical body, but this is not who we are. We are energy. We are soul. And our souls have different energies. Masculine, feminine, you know, they're just the two polarities and dualities of our energy body. Everyone has it, male or female, in this body, but we all have it. I think one of the biggest things for me, and I don't mean to trigger anyone who may have like homo phobias, but like, even one of the things that kind of frustrated me growing up with my parents was like this kind of, not even with my parents, with like Christianity, was like this idea, or at least the sect of Christianity we're in, right? This idea that like, oh, we're over other religions, or other religions are wrong, or people who don't like, who are lesbians or gays or trans or like all these things are wrong. For me, I never I never resonated with that, because I'm like, we're all human beings above all. And now, coming into the knowledge that I know now, I'm just like, we're all energy. So even like, even more so, like, it's not even about male or female. It's not about who you marry. It's not about what you choose to do to your body. Again, this is just a physical body. The very idea that right after this we go to heaven or hell is also not something I resonate with. Reincarnations and past lives are real things, and that makes more sense to me, right? This idea that we're constantly flowing energetically through different dimensions and different lives. It might be on this earth, it might be on other earths or other planets, and like, it makes so much more sense. I didn't mean to make this video as like a bash on Christianity whatsoever. I think everyone has soul contracts and different experiences that they're meant to have in each incarnation, and different beliefs that are meant to serve them for the incarnation that they're in. But I really hope that my soul, and like incarnations after this, that I incarnate with a family that is way more accepting and like flowy. Like, what I am now is what I want to incarnate into. I do not want to go through another karmic experience of being in one version of belief that I need to then divulge after out of. I don't want to do that again. It's rough. Like, the fact that it took me 22 years to break out of that ideology and perspective in order to come to where I am now. Like, again, I know that my soul has chosen this path, but it's like, there are times when I look at people who've had that freedom, who've had parents who've been that like free spirit, or that like spiritual from the get-go, and I'm like, my life could have been so much different, man. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. But yeah, like, I've always had this idea that we're all human beings above all, and I don't think it truly matters completely what you do or who you love. Like, it's all energy, right? But yeah, I'm gonna link all those channels and sites that I mentioned or tried to mention down below, if you're interested in like watching them or looking them up. I don't even know what I'm gonna title this video because it became more than I anticipated it becoming. Like I kind of figured it would be kind of about my spiritual awakening, but also kind of about like learning about yourself. But it's become this kind of energetic flow from one thing to another. But everything, it's gonna resonate with who it resonates with, the people who watch it. Love you guys. If you got to the end, definitely comment. It's not gonna resonate with everyone. Some people are gonna be offended by it, and that's you. I am in the space, like I said, of I'm in hermit mode right now. I'm in learning mode. I've been getting the Hierophant a lot lately, and I've always connected it to like teaching, because that's like it's like conventionality. It could be marriage, it could be teaching, but I always connect it with teaching, and it's been coming out for me. And then it came out again yesterday or today, and I looked at it and I was like, it's about me being a student right now, because that's literally what I am. I'm taking in so much information right now that it's like my crown is the amount of headaches I've had. There's a lot. There's a lot coming in from my Akashic records right now, but it's like, yeah, I'm cool with it. I'm excited about it. I like it. I like being able, like, there are times when I just sit and watch shows and TV and stuff, and literally half my day might be watching like things on YouTube to gain more knowledge, and then the other half might be like watching The Simpsons. And I am totally okay with that. I haven't mentioned this, but if you would like to book with me or talk with me or whatever, you can reach me on sunflowernae.com. You can book with me there. You can donate there. Any donations are super helpful. If you haven't noticed from like all the videos I've been doing, I do live in my car, and I do have a cat, Teddy. Oh my god, my child, he's so adorable. He's just sleeping back there. So any donations are super helpful. I do need to get gas and food at some point, so but yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.